5 most disturbing stealth camping encounters caught on camera by Chilling Scares. So actually, I don't know what stealth camping is, not offhand, but I'm very curious as to what it is. I'm assuming it's you go out in the middle of somewhere, like in your car or something, like a parking lot, and you're able to just camp there, assuming that's what it is. And I feel like there's ability for it to go really wrong.
Ian on YouTube is a channel run by 30-year-old Ian who's been posting on the platform for the better part of a decade. His content covers everything from day-in-the-life work vlogs to different adventures after hours. And while most of it is nothing more than fun, one particular encounter left him shaken to his core. On January 18th, 2024, Ian posted a video going over the disturbing experience he had while stealth camping in a McDonald's parking lot in Palm Springs, California. Stealth camping, for those who don't
I think I know where Palm Springs was, because I was from the San Bernardino area. I'd have to check where it's out on a map.
know, is when someone spends the night in a vehicle or tent in an area not officially designated for camping, usually while trying to avoid detection. It's often done out of necessity, curiosity, or simply for the thrill of it. And while it can be harmless, it also means the camper is completely exposed and vulnerable to whatever or whoever might be lurking nearby. This is exactly what happened with Ian on the 16th of January 2024. He'd been stealth camping for quite some time by that point, and had spent nights in much harsher conditions, like during heavy rain or in a sandstorm. So, staying overnight in a McDonald's parking lot seemed like nothing to him. Unfortunately, he couldn't have been more wrong. After setting everything up, he went to lie down in the back of his car. But just as he was about to fall asleep, he was interrupted by the sound of someone repeatedly trying to open his car's door. He immediately got up to see who it was, and this is what he came across.
What's going on, man? What's going on? What's up? What's up, man? What's going on? What are you doing?
There was a man standing outside the passenger door. What made the encounter even more unsettling was that the man never said a word, even as Ian repeatedly called out to him, trying to get some kind of explanation for what he was doing.
I'm trying to problem solve this. I'm trying to work through this. Because especially if it sounded like he was trying to force his way in, right? He's acting, and if that is the case, this is very reserved. This is definitely someone got caught doing a thing, and they're trying to play it off. I mean, sure, one could draw conclusions in regards to substance abuse. One could draw, status of if they have a home or not. You could, are they lights on behind the eyes, so to speak? Is this someone who is a repeat offender? Is this somebody just down on the luck? I think all of that is entirely speculative, especially in the moment, because you can clearly tell this individual is spooked. And I think, making it's the mountain lion effect, right? Make yourself big, right? Talk about, make yourself loud. Because could this have gone? So, and this is the thing as well, right? My YouTube video about me, quote unquote, being targeted, right? Which was a video, you can go look it up, where I had somebody that was being super fanatical, right? There's gonna be people who remember this video when I went live. Someone who was super fanatical and just like whispering under their breath, with me being the only person within like 10 feet of them, save this individual, right? And then they get in their car, and something told me not to get in my car, like I say in the video, and they box me in, like they T-bone box me in. So my car is vertical and theirs is horizontal, blocking me, and they're just staring at me with their passenger window down, at driving, right, at the driver's seat. You just don't know in the situation, and your brain goes a mile a minute. Mine, thankfully, was a situation that was resolved by me not having to do anything. Now, as I said in the video as well, I have a 6-foot claymore sword in the back of my car that I'm sure I could have like 4 different ways to get to if worst came to worst, as an absolute worst case scenario. I also explained that having a firearm would not have helped in the situation at all, because technically I would be violating the rules of firearm safety. I would not know what's behind the individual. Even if I had one and had pulled the trigger, I could have potentially hit the retirement home thing, whatever building behind it, therefore violating the rule of don't point at anything you do not wish to destroy, right? Like, I would be in direct violation and conflict of those rules. But that being said, your brain goes a mile a minute in these situations, regardless of how tame or just heavy they are, right? you just don't know. And thus the follow-up question comes down to, would this be the same interaction if this person in the car was a woman? Would this be the same interaction if this person showed fear, right? I mean, clearly you can hear the fear in their voice, right? But they're getting loud. They're getting, hey, what's going on, bro? What's up, bro? Versus being more timid and shy. And I think that the fact that that can be a variable that plays a part into this makes these situations very tense. And this is one of those that I feel like eventually I'm going to have actual like podcast status conversations with people about their experiences that they can honestly talk about, right? I worked security for 15 years, and these are things I experienced, right? I love those conversations. Like, they're so cool.
Hey, bro. What's up?
Don't get out. You don't know if he's armed or not.
What you doing, man? Ain't weird, bro.
Yeah, he just moved.
Despite his panic, however, he made the wise decision to stay locked within his car and quickly drive to a more hidden spot in the lot. But that wasn't enough. Because just a few minutes later, Ian spotted the same man walking around the parking lot, possibly trying to locate his car. Fearing for his safety, he drove to a completely different location and managed to sleep through the rest of the night without any incident. Still, the question remained, who was this man and what exactly was he trying to do? Ian never made a follow-up or shared any more info regarding the encounter in the video's description, so we can only speculate on what happened that night. Now, it's entirely possible that he was just a harmless, mentally ill person who wasn't fully conscious of what he was doing. This could explain why he didn't answer when Ian called out to him and just calmly walked away without a word. However, a far more likely explanation is that the act of trying to break into Ian's car was completely intentional, and when he was caught, he just acted confused and harmless to seem less threatening.
Yep.
Perhaps he really thought the car was empty and was trying to steal it. Or maybe he knew Ian was inside and had intentions to rob him, or something far more sinister. His strange behavior also suggested that he might have been under the influence of some kind of drugs,
possibly,
which would have made him even more unstable and, by extension, more dangerous. Fortunately, Ian managed to drive away unscathed before he could find out the man's true intentions.
You just don't know. You don't know if this individual like scouted the area beforehand, like maybe they saw you going into your car. Like, you don't know if this was opportunity, random chance, serial unaliver status where they just target random people. You just don't know. It's hard to know. It's impossible to know, especially in the moment when your adrenaline's pumping. Whether this person's on abusing substances or not, whether this person is, doing something or other, or whether this person is fully mentally there or not. You can't really diagnose that in the second, even if you have the skills and credentials to. Getting yourself out of that situation is paramount.
On February 11th, 2024, stealth camping YouTuber Brendan Explores posted a video of him spending a night in the small village of Jaywick, England. The thing about Jaywick, however, is that it's been named as the most deprived town in all of England. The combination of high unemployment and poor living conditions has pushed many of its residents toward a life of crime. Brendan, however, wanted to see the village firsthand to decide whether it was truly as bad as the media made it out to be. His first impressions of the place were quite good, with him admiring the natural landscape surrounding the village. What he didn't realize at the time was that this lighthearted escape to the countryside would soon spiral into complete disaster. It began with him driving through the town and searching for a discreet spot to park his van so he could settle in before it got dark. He eventually found a parking lot that looked promising and decided to make it his home for the night. But it didn't take long for him to start noticing a series of red flags in the area, like people riding around with gangster rap blaring from a speaker.
I mean, is that really a red flag, though? I think that's one of those, I guess if you want to Asmongold logic it, right? How many dots make a line, right? Regardless of your opinion on the man, I think that there is some validity in regards to how many dots will make a line. I think that should be taken with a grain of salt. I think that should be done on a case-by-case basis with heavy context. But I think, me hearing this, I mean, I'm not super, Yeah, little flag, not a red flag. I guess. I don't know. I guess it's because, I mean, I hear rap all the time in Idaho, I guess, to be fair. I don't know. It's one of those that I personally, this in a vacuum, I'd probably overlook just because, music choice, yeah, it makes sense.
And a group of street racers speeding down the road right in front of the parking lot.
That I'd be a little more concerned about.
As the evening approached, he was also left alone in the parking lot, making him a prime target for any would-be robber. So, after thinking about it for a few minutes, he thought it would be best to leave the parking lot and find a more secluded spot for camping. He eventually went down a dirt trail and parked in the middle of nowhere, without any houses or major roads nearby. This turned out to be the worst decision Brendan could have made in that situation. Because at around 2:30 a.m., about 4 hours after he went to sleep, he was woken up by the sound of someone walking around his van.
He is out in the middle of nowhere, to be fair, as well. You don't know if this is someone's land or not. Still very creepy in the moment. I mean, going down to Boise, allegedly downtown Boise, I mean, it's one of those things that I overlook, but there's people like, I guess there's etiquette to starting a street race. I guess it's, you know, people rev up at each other, and I guess there's a response that you do if you're interested. Bro, that I know nothing about street racing culture, if I'm being completely honest. I'm fairly ignorant of it. But being able to, I went to downtown Boise. I went to what did I go to? I didn't go to Space Bar. I went to the Balcony, which is kind of the funny club, if you will, the gay bar even. I just it has an actual balcony. I like sitting there. Not that I frequent bars, but whenever I go, it's one of those that, like, I know for a fact that this bar is not sleazy or shady, or I don't have to worry about walking in on a Klan meeting. Let's put it that way. But yeah, it was interesting to have somebody at the time kind of explain, like, oh yeah, they're just trying to pick up a race. This is how they do things. Then they'll usually take it out past Boise, and then they'll I don't know where they go after that, but they'll start in Boise looking for a race, and then they'll go out somewhere and then do that. I always like learning about new things, even if I don't know it. It's fascinating to learn how people do things.
This person then tried to open the van's sliding door.
So that's a little more concerning.
Before Brendan even had a chance to fully understand his predicament, this happened.
Hey! Is that a broken window? Or a shot? I can't tell.
Whoever this person was shattered the passenger side window before running away once Brendan started shouting. In the video's description, Brendan speculated that this person was likely trying to steal the mini refrigerator he had on the passenger seat.
Nice.
While this might not be entirely accurate, there's still some truth behind it. Judging by the fact that the intruder fled the moment they heard Brendan, it's likely they were simply looking to steal something.
Crime opportunity.
More. As for how they managed to find his van in the middle of nowhere, it's entirely possible that they stalked him from when he was in town.
Yeah.
However, given these circumstances, the situation could have turned out a lot worse. As one comment under the video pointed out, when you said you had found the perfect quiet spot after driving away from town down a quiet pitch-black lane in the middle of nowhere with nobody else around for miles, at that point I was absolutely terrified. How on earth you managed to go to sleep to begin with amazes me. A few blokes with their hoods pulled down and armed, and you wouldn't have stood a chance. While nothing truly tragic occurred, the experience was terrifying enough to rattle Brendan. Instead of staying the night, he drove through the darkness until daybreak just to make it back home, which was ultimately the right call. He's still making stealth camping videos, but now he's far more cautious about where he parks, especially when it comes to remote or isolated spots.
I mean, this is one of those things that, like, you start running into fear of labeling people and towns as xenophobic really quick. There's certain towns in Idaho that I go through when I've driven through it that I don't ever want to go back through personally. Or if I do, I just, kindly, get my stuff and get out, right? So going up through SCA, so I had to connect from where I live. I had to go all the way through Boise. I had to go all the way up through, we're going up to through the east side of the state. We were going to, this was to get into an SCA event up in Idaho Falls, right? So northeast side of the state, near Montana. But there was a town called Shelley, and I don't want to draw any negativity to this town. I'm sure there's plenty of lovely people who live in that town. It's very much one of those towns, you go in, you see the gas station, you drive for a mile or two, you see a couple churches, some rundown businesses, and then you're out of the town, right? Like very, very small town, to which, was we go showing up in SCA garb, especially as a dude wearing tights. Probably not somewhere you want to be. Probably not. But I think I think that runs into the issue where a lot of people will just label small towns as, oh, well, you're just incredibly xenophobic. You're just them backwater people. And I don't think that in any way, shape, or form about towns like Shelley that I go through. However, I think that there needs to be a healthy respect, as I understand that there are not towns that you really go through. And even then, if it's a small town and it's an insular community, they're going to be able to recognize an outsider fairly quickly. Allegedly, and this is just allegations, I know next to nothing about the area, right? Let's talk about Appalachia, right? How allegedly there are small towns in Appalachia where you don't go. And if you run into trouble there because you do go there, the police won't do anything there. Now, I know next to nothing about Appalachia. This is a claim that I've heard. I have nothing to substantiate it on. It's one of those that I could say, I mean, realistically, yeah, anywhere in the U.S., I'm sure there's places you just don't go on just understanding. And I'm sure that it's harder for police to do certain things there. But I could definitely see it being a damaging stereotype. And I'm sure there's plenty of wonderful people who live in Appalachia that, whether they can confirm or deny the existence of towns that may or may not exist, or may not, like holler status, from what I understand. There needs to be that healthy respect, right? Just because someone's from Appalachia, just because somebody's from a small town, right? Shelley, Idaho status or smaller, a town with, you go through a town and it has like 2 bars, right? That status, right? Gas station and 2 bars doesn't mean you should vilify people. I think this is because there's more macro issues that go into this one, clearly, right? There's macro issues that go into a area on hard times, potential gang activity, as well as it being a small town. A correlation not being causation, right? Just because it's a small town is not why this happened. There's other macro factors while it being a small town as to why this happened. I'm glad I'm pronouncing it correctly, because I always forget how I pronounce it, and I always understood it was pronounced Appalachia.
In March of 2025, a camping YouTuber named Daniel Mark Brown planned a stealth camping trip in the woodlands surrounding Oswestry, England. His plan was simple: travel alongside one of the many hiking trails in the area and then go off-trail to find a good stealth spot. And this worked better than he expected, finding the perfectly hidden camping area in no time. After setting down his supplies, Daniel went to the nearby river to cook a meal before heading back to the spot he'd found earlier.
I'm hungry now.
By the time he came back, it was already starting to get dark, and the trail was starting to empty out, giving Daniel the peace of mind to wind down and call it a night. However, what happened next made him realize the true danger he was in. After laying out his sleeping bag, settling down, and finally falling asleep, 90 minutes had passed when he was suddenly jolted awake.
100% been spotted. Right, I'm trying to keep calm and keeping calm. I'm almost too scared to breathe here. I think a dog or something just came in.
Daniel was woken up by the cracking of branches, followed by the light from a flashlight. He eventually found the courage to unzip his sleeping bag to see who was out there.
Oh, that's right. They're looking straight at me. I'm trying not to panic.
I feel like acknowledging it is probably one of the worst things to do in this situation. Like, I'm trying to think how you problem solve that. Because if you've been spotted, even if they're walking around your tent or something like that, I mean, maybe they're sizing you up. But I feel like maybe it's if you unzip tent, look at them, acknowledge them, and then they see you, then they size you up and deem that you're worth the trouble or that they can take you. Maybe that's the interaction there. I guess maybe be loud, right? Like kind of like the first video, be loud, kind of challenge back. I don't know. I would be very curious to hear people with much more life experience and camping experience than I'd be curious to know how you problem solve something like this.
By this point, he couldn't think of anything else to do but call out to the person who was now aiming the flashlight at him. But
I don't... So, it's in his direction. He might notice something. it's hard to tell in the moment. How do you know if you've been spotted or not? Because clearly, him turning the light off could, give you a sense of security that no, they're still looking for you. But that they also have to walk, and humans will generally, in walking, move. They have to move their arms, right? That's an interesting one.
Anything else to do but call out to the person who was now aiming the flashlight at him. But instead of getting a reply of any kind, the person just turned around and disappeared into the woods, never to be seen again.
Okay.
Hello?
They haven't been about. I haven't seen a single light now for maybe 5-10 minutes. I don't even know. I've been just trying to keep as calm as possible. But when they walked off and the light went out, I don't even know which direction they were. But
don't pursue.
Somewhere in that direction.
It's not worth it.
I'll forget it. Let's just go.
This experience startled him enough to quickly pack his stuff and hightail out of the wooded area. However, if the person with the flashlight had malicious intent, leaving the campsite wasn't going to be an easy task. The way they refused to respond to Daniel's hello was unsettling enough. But how they silently turned off their light and disappeared into the woods suggested they might have been hiding, waiting to ambush him to rob him, or possibly worse. That being said, it's entirely possible that the mysterious person was just someone walking their dog at night or something else completely innocent. As for why they didn't reply to Daniel, it's possible they were just as scared as he was after hearing a hello from the darkness of the woods. However, we also can't rule out the possibility that they were trying to sneak up on Daniel for some sinister reason, only turning around once they realized they'd been spotted. Whatever the case may be, Daniel made it out of the woods safely without encountering the same person again.
It's hard to tell. You just don't know. You just don't know. Like, it's entirely possible that this was some person with malicious intent that was trying to use a crime of opportunity in exerting the least amount of effort possible by person being asleep, thus person not being asleep. They realized, oh, this is going to be a little harder than possible. Maybe I'll bide my time and wait. It's entirely possible that that was a conclusion. It could also be just be someone who went on a midnight stroll, right? And they're just, you're walking around down your favorite hiking trail or something, right? And suddenly you hear somebody call out from the woodline, hello? What are you going to do? You're probably going to stop. You're probably going to assess your surroundings. You're probably, because remember, a light is a two-way conduit for all intents and purposes. Yes, it allows you to see things, but it also allows others to see you. And I think this is where we get into what is it the Dark Woods paradox or Dark Woods theory? It's tied to the Fermi paradox, right? The Dark Woods theory or whatever, where you're in a forest and, but what else is in the forest? A bunch of wolves, a bunch of bears, etc. Right? Like there's other things in that forest, even though you don't necessarily see them. I think it's the Dark Woods hypothesis specifically. You just don't know. Like, I think this could have ended worse. I think this was one of those that it was, regardless of malicious intent or not, dealing with the situation at that point in time was not in the other person's benefit, whether as they're just a midnight stroll, whether they're just passing by, whether they're looking for something but not necessarily that, or having malicious intent and having stalked this person. It also was a good thing that this individual packed up his camp and ended up just getting out of there. I think at that point, leaving is the correct option. Because then if somebody's following you, you will know that they are following you. Thus, you enter a completely different situation entirely. If they're just in that area, they're going to stay confined to that area. Realistically, going back to your car and leaving, I feel was the correct decision here.
Ellie and Graham are an elderly duo from the UK who travel around the country in their camper van while vlogging about their adventures on YouTube. In November of 2022, they were on one of their trips when they had to urgently travel back home due to an emergency. However, they were too far away to make it back in one day. After searching online, they found a stealth camping spot on the outskirts of a town called Altrincham. It was a fairly small car park, but the couple was in a hurry, so they didn't have any other choice but to camp there for the night, hoping to get back on the road the next morning. What they didn't expect, however, was that this would spiral into the most terrifying experience of their entire camping journey. By the time they got to this location, it was already dark out. They parked their van and settled in for the night, going to sleep at around 11 p.m. But then at 1 a.m., both of them woke up to the sound of loud music blaring from a car. However, the music stopped soon after, so they brushed it off and began settling back into their bed. That's when they both heard a disturbing bang coming from their own van. It was loud enough that they thought a tree had fallen onto their van. They quickly rushed outside to see what had happened, and this was the shocking sight they came across.
Just can't believe it. We've just been woken up with a loud bang, and
a brick.
You dropped something on the floor there. Or was that glass? 2 bricks. And someone's just smashed Merlin's windows while we were sleeping. So no, we don't recommend this as a place to stop. They smashed the windscreen, but Graham's hoping he can drive with that. But here's us in the middle of nowhere with a broken window and a cracked windscreen. About 200 miles from home.
After some investigation, they found 3 bricks around the van, which was severely damaged. The windshield was cracked, the passenger side window was completely shattered, and the van had a massive dent behind the sliding door. More troubling than the physical damage to the van was the psychological impact on Ellie and Graham, who are now absolutely terrified.
Right.
It's also possible that this could have been a trap designed to lure them out of the safety of their locked van.
I was about to say, they are very lucky that going outside did not go worse for them. Like, it's the concept of, like, you know, r/never happened, r/no sleep. I camped in this wooded area. You know, I found this nice little clearing in a forest, and you know, I fell asleep. And in the morning, you know, I thought I heard some rustling at night, but I woke up in the morning and I found that I was in the middle of just a giant circle of bones. And it's like, and then I hightailed it out of there, and it's like, okay, let's think about this critically for a second, though. Like, if you're in a situation where you don't know what's going on, right? And maybe this is my trauma response to things. Maybe this is my actual response to things like this, right? But the way that I generally do, engage with things is I stop and I try to take in what's going on, right? So you wake up r/no sleep status, and there's just a bunch of bones around your campsite, right? You stop. You make yourself as small as possible, and you try to take bearing of your surroundings, right? In a situation like this, loud bang. My first thing would generally, and obviously there is something to be said for until you're in a situation like this, a high-stress situation environment like this, you don't know how you'll react, and I think that is a genuine point to make. Okay, there's a loud bang. What happened? Is there someone still around? Why did the loud bang happen, right? You know, things are going to be racing through your mind, and you need, because running out, what happens if there were, 2-3 people out there, and I don't know, maybe Resident Evil 4 chainsaw status. One of them is chainsaw, right? I mean, I'm being comical at this point, but you get the point, right? Like, you just don't know. And rushing out to meet that, especially if it is a trap, like is being said, that can cause issues and put yourself in further harm.
Even after hours had passed, no one approached the couple, attempted a break-in, or made any kind of move toward them. But instead of bringing comfort, this only made the two even more unsettled. They were just attacked with multiple bricks, yet they had no idea who did it and why. After talking to the family from another camper van that was parked nearby, they learned that the attacker came in a car, as the other family heard tire screeches after the attack. Ellie and Graham also figured that this was a group effort, because despite the multiple bricks, there was only one collision sound. In other words, there were at least 3 suspects who threw bricks at the same time. Why would anyone attack an elderly couple out of nowhere and then leave without gaining anything from it? Maybe they just wanted to scare off campers for whatever reason.
Yeah,
but if that were the case, why was the other van spared completely? Unfortunately, there's really no clues to help answer these questions. No faces were seen, no voices were heard, and no clear motive ever emerged, leaving the entire incident a complete mystery. And while Ellie and Graham were too scared to ever go stealth camping again after this incident, it seems by now they've since made a complete recovery and are back on the road again.
That's good. That's awesome. And yeah, that you are correct. The context of that is they thought it was a tree.
On the 15th of July 20...
Before we get into the next one, the context, yes, is that they thought there was a tree that fell. And I want to clarify that this is hindsight 2020, right? Like, in the moment, it's going to be a lot different. And all that really matters is that they got out of it in one piece. They got out of it without issue, obviously a little shaken up, and it seems like they've recovered at this point in time. But the fact that they got out safely is really what matters here. I want to make sure that we're stressing that. Now, so there's a loud bang, whether it's, a tree falling on something, whether it's regardless, right? Like, if I heard a loud bang right now, I know at this exact moment, I'm alone I'm alone in my house right now, other than a couple pets, right? Like I'm alone. If I heard a bang or a crash right now, my first instinct is to make myself as small as possible. I need to assess the situation. Then, if I hear something like footsteps, if I hear something like, rummaging around, okay, then we start to get into a different situation. And thus, at that point, most likely 911 will be called. Addressing something like that is, I don't know the situation, right? And it could be entirely possible that the crash there's a crash at the street outside, and by sheer weird parabolic math arc, you have the passenger side window, right? Like the exterior window just parabolic arcs and just bursts through a window, right? Because it's entirely possible. Weirder has happened. But you just don't know, and you need to take in that information to familiarize yourself with your surroundings, right? So if you hear a loud crash and it's like, okay, is this a tree? What is this, right? You take note, and then if you hear clearly like a car screeching off, you're like, okay, let's make sure no one else is around, right? Because at least in the vehicle you are safe at that point in time. Me in this situation, hearing a loud bang home alone, it's like, okay, what's going on? Okay, I don't hear footsteps. I don't hear any pets going off. I don't hear rummaging or anything. Okay, let's make sure someone at least knows what's going on and go from there. And then most likely it'll be like, well, just check it, right? Okay, sure, right? And then you go check it out. No, it's just a wind, somewhat car mirror, right? Or hear some rummaging. I hear some footsteps. Make myself as small as possible. And then, especially if I hear footsteps rushing, well, I mean, that's why I have a longsword. Let's be real. I have my longsword and my misericord in my room because I actually really like them. I don't really have space anywhere else for them, right? But there are options. There are things, but you have to make sure you're gathering the most information.
22, YouTuber The Abandoned Camper uploaded a video of her stealth camping in an abandoned cemetery from the 1800s. Things started off quite normal as she found a clearing hidden in the thick foliage and began unpacking her camping gear. After setting up camp, she decided to explore the cemetery to pass the time until nightfall. And that's when things started to take a strange turn. As she was filming the gravestones, she began to hear what sounded like a bunch of kids screaming.
I mean, it's entirely possible that's mountain lions. Mountain lions make some weird noises.
She assumed she was alone in the cemetery. However, she could not have been more wrong. As she was going back to her camp, she saw a group of kids in the distance who likely knew about her presence.
Interesting.
So if you can't tell, it's pretty dark here right now, but there are kids here, like young kids in the cemetery. And I'm wondering how active this place actually is. Do people come here at night and kind of party in the forest or something?
I mean, let's be real. How many of us have heard about wasn't it really prominent in the 80s and 90s? Cemetery party, graveyard parties, stuff like that. I'm pretty sure that was a thing. So here's the double-edged sword about this cemetery, right? Cemetery, right? What is this? Is a cemetery on a hill? Or is it generally a open piece of land with monuments on it? You are, for all intents and purposes, on full display in a cemetery. Yes, it's marked. It is an area, right? But someone can, in this situation, someone could absolutely be watching from the tree line. And sure, I guess you can bob and weave between a couple tombstones. Maybe you hide behind a mausoleum-like thing if there is one there. But for the most part, you look at this and it's just you feel like you're in a fishbowl, right? There could be anything in the tree line. So, abandoned cemetery, so no one's coming through to check on it, though. I mean, there is that. I think there's a couple lines of logic here. I think the other terrifying thing to consider, and like we've said in other reactions on subjects like this, she is an woman, right? Would things necessarily escalate or things be as bad if she was a man? And the fact that you have to consider that people and things will take different actions depending on perceived strength is problematic, because something like this could, for all intents and purposes, just be resolved much like my own situation, right? Where somebody targeted me, locked me in, and it's just like, I'm a dude that's just disinterested, right? But if I was an woman in the similar situation, could the individual potentially have tried to take things further? That is something crucial to keep in mind when considering things like this.
That dog kind of ruined it. Not ruined it, I shouldn't say that. The dog barking, I didn't want to disturb anybody, especially since I'm not supposed to be here. So
yeah.
I think I'll finish my exploring tomorrow morning. And because there seems to be still a lot of stuff here. See? Hear them?
I almost feel like that could be, if assuming this was human and not animal, right? Form of catcall, right? For all intents and purposes. I mean, I could philosophically look at that and go, okay, but what's the reasoning for that? Somebody watching from the tree line, or having been where you just were, having that. I as a dude don't have to deal with catcalling, okay? I'm not walking down the street. I'm not walking into a store and somebody be like, hey, how you doing, right? Well, let's be real. No, I don't have to deal with that. Especially from people who may or may not be super creepy, right? Like, it's one of those things that I try to be cognizant about and can absolutely tell you more things about a situation. It's like a peacock. I don't know. It depends if it's an area for them or not. I mean, and that's the thing, is you can't, like, because like mountain lions and animals make weird sounds, especially those that can mimic. Like, how do you tell? How do you reasonably tell? And I think that's an important distinction.
I think they know I'm here. That's not good.
At this point, she was pretty certain that the kids knew about her and were just messing with her. However, she still kept her camera rolling just in case, and even made sure that she wasn't followed back to the campsite.
I'm gonna keep this recording. Just in case. But I'm also gonna stop and find out what they're doing, if they're actually watching me or not. Oh, I can see them. I just don't want them to see where I'm going.
See, so now it seems like there's visual confirmation that this is not an animal, or at the very least there's visual confirmation of something humanoid in the vicinity, right? So obviously, yeah, at this point tracking with, no, there's kids following me in this. I think definitely making sure to try to lose them, bob and weave, try not to lead them directly back to your campsite, I think is the absolute correct call. Even though it's getting dark, even though, yeah, it's going to be a little rough, trying to potentially find your way back depending on how good you are at directions and stuff, right? But you don't know what their intent is. And that's now there are very few cases, from what I understand, of actual like children doing really horrific and heinous things, like actual serial unaliver status. Especially if it's a group of kids, it's probably a bunch of kids partying and or potentially getting up to no good, right? I don't think we're necessarily dealing with, the one serial unaliver. She was 10 years old, and she did some really heinous stuff. Like, I don't think we're dealing with something like that as much as you just don't know, because they're clearly keeping their distance. But it's not like they're rushing her, right? You don't know what you don't know what's going on, and you kind of want to keep it that way, honestly.
Okay. I think they're gone.
Once back at her stealth campsite, she started a small fire to cook her food. Unfortunately, this turned out to be a huge mistake, because shortly after starting the fire, she started hearing the sound of people talking and walking toward her in the forest.
The fire obviously being a beacon.
Here. They don't have headlamps on, but like I said in my last video, I do not like being around people in the middle of a forest, especially when it's dark out.
I can agree to that. Yeah.
So I'm might pack up and get out of here when I think the coast is clear.
It's unclear what the kid's intentions were, and we likely won't ever know, as she made the wise decision to avoid any risk by packing up her things and quickly leaving the cemetery, making sure to remain as quiet as possible.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, something like this isn't necessarily going to have a resolution, right? And that's fine. Some things don't need a resolution. Some things, as long as you get out of there safely, as long as you make sure that you get out, that's really all that matters. And I think that's what's important, right? I think it's easy in hindsight to criticize things. I think it's easy to say, well, I would do this in this situation, but there are certain things you just don't know how you act until you're in that situation. And hopefully people never have to be put in this situation to begin with. So I think these videos are cool. I think it's a way to vicariously experience things like this and take in knowledge and wisdom from others, and try to, and also kind of self-reflect a little bit. And how would you interact? How do you think you would interact in a situation like this? And try to honestly figure out, like, you know, what would you do? What would happen? You know, what would the logical progression of this be? And have others chime in and be like, well, actually, in a situation like that, you know, lighting a fire could be a good thing, because at the very least you can see, and then having differing opinions, right? Bringing people together for dialogues to make sure that people can feel safe and empowered in situations like this. So I think it's interesting. I thought this was really cool. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you're staying safe out there, and I hope to see you in the next one.